Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today in this video I am talking about Buggy Trike. As you can see in the images below, in the forum of the website retroadbikes.com, every year there is a big bike building contest going on, a so-called build off. It usually runs from May 1st until beginning of September. Besides honor and respect from other builders from all around the globe and a homemade trophy from last year's winners, there is no money to win. The judges at the end are all the members of the forum. This is my entry from last year's build of the campground Buggy Trike. This bike ended up on 7th place out of 41 finishers and won a special award. That's my best result so far after participating 5 and finishing 4 times. It all started as a beaten up bare bonus NSU ladies frame with matching fork, probably from the late 50s, a neglected baby buggy from the 60s, and a decommissioned therapy trike. The plan was to marry these three into a trike with a trunk. After all, I ended up with a very fun and practical ride. So regarding the contest, no prize needed. I got mine already, but I would appreciate your vote anyway. See also the video in the last step. Now the supplies, parts, frame of a 50s ladies bike NSU, baby buggy of unknown origin, probably from the 60s, therapy trike, average about 10 years old, still produced rear triangles from another frame that had already been transformed into a stool before, vintage 60s car rear lights from Opel Record P2, various vintage and new bike parts, various electrical parts, switches, cables, battery, IKEA parts. I never throw IKEA hardware away, never. Grey cardboard, plywood, drape rolls, tools, basic set of bike tools, basic woodworking tools, corrugated cardboard, soldering station, paint, set of quality cans from Molotov, tape, tomato paste. Curious, got to step 11. Step 1, mockups, sketches and a basic plan. First, I had a good look at all my parts and pieced a basic mockup of the frame together and thought about where and how to place the buggy as a trunk. So I had to take apart the therapy bike and mount the rear axle to the ladies' frame. This gave me a first idea how to continue from there on and come up with ideas on a basic plan to work from. The mock-up happened almost a year before the start of the actual contest. Based on this mock-up is my first crude sketch, and later in the build I even made a rough 3D version with SketchUp. Step 2, the basic trike. First I had to put together the basic trike and make it work, so I went at it and took apart the trike. The ladies' frame was already relieved of all the unnecessary parts when I bought it. Adding the trike axle to the frame was really easy, as the rear end of the ladies' frame was of similar form as the trike. Both has horizontal dropouts. With the trike axle on it, there was no more need for the stand, so I took it off, and while at it, I also exchanged the pedals to some black ones I found in one of my boxes, as the original ones were toast. So the trike was rideable now and ready for further additions. Step 3, base for the trunk. I put a lot of thought into how to construct a solid base for the trunk without welding. What I came up with was using parts of another rear triangle and fix them to the dropouts of the trike. First I mounted them to the outside, but that didn't work due to clearance issues with the trike axle, so I swapped them to the inside. That worked much better. Then I slowly started bending the remains of the seat and chainstays horizontally with some brute force, a heavy old vise and an old fork as lever extension. I finally got a hallway leveled platform for the trunk through some trial and error. Step 4, CAD cardboard edit design. With the platform ready, it was time to make some design decisions. The easiest way for me to do this is through CAD, as in cardboard edit design. It's hand-on, analog and cheap. First I transferred the side panel to packaging paper and from there onto cardboard. This cardboard side piece got mounted on some slats that could rest on the platform. From the last step like this, I could move around the trunk to find a good position for it that flowed well with the rest of the bike. As you can see on the picture with me sitting on the bike, I also needed to make room for my heels while pedaling. Step 5. Dismantling the buggy and improving the CAD design. Very carefully, I took apart the buggy. It was mostly built out of grey cardboard mounted on a wooden frame. For now, I kept all the parts for future reference. To find out if the cardboard mock-up had the right size, I fixed the original side panels to it with some clamps and string. It was tight but enough clearance and really liked the look of it. Step 6. Rebuilding the buggy trunk. The rebuild of the trunk started off with some pre-cut 6 and 8 mm plywood and grey 2 mm cardboard. First I made the new side panels 6 mm. I will later mount the original panels onto these, so they had to fit as perfect as possible. Next was to join the side panels with bottom and front. For this I used flat dowels to be as precise as possible. The panels were then glued together and also nailed from the outside. Better be safe than sorry. Step 7. Marrying the trunk to the chassis, horns and sirene. Next, I placed the car horns and siren I purchased on a flea market a long time ago behind the front wall. Now the trunk was ready to get married with its chassis. First, I fixed it with some standard hardware to it to determine the right spots for the drive-in nuts. As the front of the chassis was a bit too low, I added some spacers I had left from a broken IKEA stool I had taken apart before throwing it away. At this point, I started to use the bike as a daily ride on the campground. Like this, I could make sure that everything worked before I later painted it. Step 8. Tail lights. After a long waiting time filled with hundreds of 30s, all of a sudden this magnificent tail lights of an old Opel Rekord P2 magically appeared. A well-known auction site. I could get them for a fair price, and as soon as I had them, I started searching for options to mount them. I decided that arranging them in a classic horizontal line suits the trunks best. The only problem was how to mount something flat on a curved surface. Here a very helpful fellow bike builder stepped in and pointed me to the technique called fronting. Quickly realized this was the solution to my mounting problem and started looking for fitting cardboard tubes. I found out that standard tape rolls had the exact size necessary. Step 9. Paint job trunk. For the paint, I searched for inspiration on many classic cars sites. Basically, I wanted to have a two-tone paint job. After looking at many pictures, I decided on a combination of black, white and ruby red. The reason behind this is the fact that one of my previous bike builds and its trailer were painted in the same ruby red, and the frame was already black and I wanted to keep it that way, only with subtle changes. The other important decision was that I wanted to make look old and used, so I studied a lot of pictures and videos about Faustina paint jobs. Step 10. Wiring. With the paint job all done, I finally could focus on the electronics. The plan was to make front and tail lights fully 12V battery powered, and there were also horns and siren, and I wanted to incorporate indicators into the tail lights. Power source is a 12V motorbike battery. Step 11. Final touches. The original frame and fork were showing years of use and I wanted to keep that vibe, but in the same time I wanted to optically tie together the frame and trunk with some little design touches. First I took care of fork and frame where I started. The fork was decorated with strips of white tape. This had to come off first. Then I taped off some kind of swashes on fork and frame inspired by the swashes on the trunk. Now comes the secret ingredient into play to keep the effect of the beat up paint. Tomato paste. Others used mustard, but that was what I had on hand and both worked the same way. Step 12. Photo shooting and videos. As this bike was built for our contest, it was necessary to take some nice pictures of it, so I took my trike on a spin around the campground through the outskirts of Berlin, Clado. Step 13. Final words and possible additions. The 12V battery I used proved to be too weak, so in the long term I will need a stronger one and I really have to extend all the standard and halogen bulbs to LEDs. The trike as it sits now is single speed. Maybe I will build in a 3-geared hub at one point, but that would need some specially machined parts that I cannot afford to let them age right now. I already started building a cover also made from cardboard. Maybe I will finish it at some time, we will see.